So I'm fiddling with another tablet so that I can get a letter available so that I can read it. This is Amma Thanasanti, and I'm speaking from Orinda. And I received a letter from a student of mine, and this is what she writes. I've been feeling disillusioned about the Dharma lately, and I thought that you might be able to relate to or have some wisdom to share. With everything that's happening politically and publicly in and out of the Dharma world lately, I'm feeling sort of let down by my own optimism about the world getting better through people building awareness. I feel like my own gaining of wisdom, clarity, and awareness is just making me sadder. The more that I learn about the founders and leaders of all healing modalities, the more if I wonder if healing is even a real possibility for humans at all. I feel out of touch with it emotionally, and I'm doubting whether we as humans can ever really be truly loving. I'm realizing how often in my life the Dharma was a vehicle for me to attempt to quell and quiet my own needs. I think that some of my practice was driven by that intention, if I'm completely honest with myself. Maybe I hoped that I would be purified above desire for things to be different, for unskillfully codependent reasons. In some ways, I was driven by the craving not to be, at least a full human with desires, and I'm still uncomfortable with my own needs, advocating for myself in the world. Maybe that's why I'm feeling burnt out, cynical, and drained, but I'm not sure. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on how to proceed in practice when I'm doubting the tenets of the Dharma and confused about what the Dharma even is. So I read this question, and I am resonant with the importance of this. And for myself, one of the things that happened since myself made the choice to leave the monastic community was the recognition of some of the ways in which I have experienced a lack of clarity or a lack of integration, and the way that I observe it, half-baked results as a result of meditation practice in many different components. I certainly saw it in my monastic community, and I see it contemporarily in the world around me, and am aware of some struggles that some Buddhist communities are navigating right now. And some of the things that I have heard do not inspire confidence in the wisdom and the compassion of meditation teachers, or in some responses to the unskillful behaviors of some of the meditation teachers. So this question is, I think, is a really important question. And I think there's many different components to this question. And the basic one is, what is the role and the purpose of meditation, and whether or not it is actually serving us in terms of our capacity to grow up and to wake up as socially aware human beings. So on Monday night, I learned a new word, to be woke. I didn't hear that, didn't know the way of using that. Woke, as I understand it, is a way of being socially aware and socially conscious. And so what has been fascinating for me over these many years is to recognize that the traditional meditation practice is really good at revealing the nature of the mind. It's not necessarily brilliant bridging these gaps and having the awakening give rise to being woke. And so, for example, on Monday night, I was really heartened to see that there was a sign as you were driving in to Spirit Rock, saying that Spirit Rock is committed to diversity. And that sign has not been there forever. So it's the recent result of many, many, many years of struggle and conversations and effort to recognize that when there isn't a commitment to diversity, then the policies and the practices that happen are harmful to, certainly the first runners up are to certain populations, but in the end it harms everyone. So when we come back to the Dhamma, the tenets of the Dhamma are to be awake to what's happening the present moment. And it takes the intention to recognize that there are ways in which the Dhamma is magnificent in illuminating blind spots, and there's ways in which it is not. Now, when you couple the way in which the Dhamma is not brilliant illuminating blind spots with what can happen in our communities, which is that somebody who has leadership responsibilities has power and authority. And what is often the case for many leaders is that they become isolated and they are not surrounded by a circle of people who can give them clear, good feedback that they trust and they respect. Now, it's also the case that our blind spots around power reinforce the problem here. So I remember distinctly a friend telling me he was in a meditation community with a spiritual teacher who, in the beginning, set up the community to have a council of elders to tell him and to give him clear and direct feedback. And he cautioned everybody, and he said, it is endemic. It is almost inevitable that when a person is in a position of leadership, they get to the place where they feel that they are above the feedback of everybody around them. And I want you to know that. And so the community had been to 10 years together. And at the end of 10 years, there were things that were happening that were unskillful. And his inner counsel went to him and said, this is unskillful behavior. And he said, I don't accept that. I'm the boss. You can't talk to me like that. And so that was a context where that particular community fell apart. So we've got the combination of our internal hunger and our absence of relational skills that is combining with the weak spots of the Dhamma that do not reveal the position, the psychological developmental position that we're in, which is compounding the problems. And so I'm aware right now of a couple of different communities that are navigating considerable challenges because of behaviors of the elders and also because of the way some of the communities are responding to that. And it is unsettling. And I certainly know from my own experience that I have lived with senior elders in a monastic community who had massive amounts of unintegrated material around disregard or disrespect or even ill will towards women, and an inability to know and to name and to be able to attend to it. And so, and then within that was with some of the genders, and then it was also expressed in other ways with other genders in terms of hunger for power or for position or being exclusive or being territorial or being competitive. And so we've got the human experience of growing up, which navigates different levels of needs. And we've got the spiritual process of waking up. And this spiritual process of waking up does not automatically translate into the being able to know and identify our needs, to be able to advocate for them, without it being at somebody else's expense. And then eventually to understand the way in which we are all connected to each other, and that the more we are able to know and advocate for others' needs, to be allies and advocates for others, then the greater there is health and well-being in our communities and in the fabric of relatedness that is supporting us to do this work. So we've got these cycles and these spirals, these things that are reinforcing each other. And so I don't think that the Buddha's Dharma is wrong or is to blame. But what I think is that in our contemporary world, what we need are parallel ways of engaging the Dhamma that allows the relational field to be developed to hold us so that the blind spots which are not being revealed through meditation, which are likely because of the vulnerability of what happens to teachers when they get senior, to be able to mitigate against these different factors. Now, in terms of our own personal needs, it's, I think, also very common, and I think this may be gender related for women more than it is for men, that there's a hunger to be part of something that's bigger. And for myself, I can say very clearly that I had this absolute aspiration and clear intention that if I were to become enlightened enough, then that would solve everything, and that I wouldn't have any more suffering, and that everybody would love me. And so this was a naive 17-year-old's vision about what spirituality was. But it took a long time to be able to identify the hungers that were actually underneath that longing. The longing to belong, the longing for safety, the longing for being seen or valued, the longing for closeness, and the longing for community. And so rather than community being a series of things that we go through, what happens when we really are able to speak our mind and our truth and be valued for doing that, when our authenticity is seen and celebrated, it's a different experience of community than when our community is the hunger to belong at the expense of our awakening. So in my own naivety, when I started meditation many years ago, I had the feeling that meditation would be everything that I would need, and that if I meditated enough and I had enough insight, that it would resolve everything. But what I recognize is that meditation is, for me, it has been an invaluable part of my life. I can't imagine what life would be like without having a solid connection to meditation. But there have been other components of my world, my internal world, the things that were split off, the things that were disallowed, my own ability to understand my own needs, to advocate for them, that has not been the natural consequence of meditation. I've need to do other practices in order to understand what those things are, to be able to get in touch with them, to be able to speak them, to be able to advocate for them. And so the mistake is not in the meditation. The mistake is assuming that meditation is going to be able to do all of those things. And so when our Dharma communities and our leaders in our Dharma communities are able to understand the power of meditation as well as the limitations of meditation in themselves and in their communities, and do the work that's needed in order to come into contact with the hunger for power, the hunger for being somebody who's impressive, the hunger for fame, the hunger for pleasure, whatever it is that's driving, and to have that in conscious awareness and in balance, then we have communities that are developing people that are fully baked. And what I see is that we've got communities that are developing people that are partially baked, and the doubt that we have around the Dhamma is around the half-bakedness that we see in the people and in some of the communities around us. And so it is an interesting question, and it is not very common that I see practices that are genuinely integrative, that support the process of awakening alongside the process of being woke. And they need to come together. And so our own doubt and disillusionment, I think, is genuine. But I think what's needed, rather than to come up with a panacea that just covers over it, is to have honest and genuine conversations about what the actual problem is, and then to come up with pathways that then find a solution to it. So until we are able to navigate our own needs, to know what they are, to be able to advocate for them, then what happens is that those hungers become unconscious, and we use the power and the privilege of our position as elders and as leaders in order to get our needs met, and it can be at a terrible cost. Terrible, terrible cost, tragic cost to individuals and to the community at whole. So the questions are brilliant and they are pertinent. And it doesn't mean that meditation isn't valuable, but we need to start looking at the limitations of it so that we can begin to see how we can move forward as communities to begin to do the work that's needed so that we bring the awakening and the woke together, so that we then have an integrated practice of healthy human beings that know what's going on inside of themselves and are not using their power and their privilege for their own advantage at the expense of others. So it's an important question, and it's incredibly relevant today. And I don't have a simple answer for it. I think that the question actually is asking that we ask more questions and that we have very deep conversations about it. So I thank you for asking that question. Awesome question. And, I myself am in the middle of a similar process, because coming out of monastic life, I'm actually asking the same things. How is it possible that monastic life that is designed for awakening people is generating so many people that are half-baked? How is this possible? And I think the reason why it's possible in monastic life is the same reason why it's possible in a secular life, because the actual practice of meditation in our contemporary context that is not well endowed with a relational field and does not have necessary a lot of psychological insight about the process of development of needs is not ideally suited for putting these two things together of awakening and being woke. And for me, I get really excited and energized about being awakened and being woke, because I'm not interested in being half-baked. I'm aware of the places where I am, but I'm committed to actually being fully baked. That's my interest. So I offer these as thoughts, as reflections, and if they are useful, yay. And if they're not useful, let them be, let them go. And I would invite communities to begin to start having these conversations of what are the blind spots and what is needed in order to bring together the integration of this deep and profound transcendent wisdom that is available, the gradual and the imminent path that's available in these teachings, with a cultural awareness and an understanding of needs that allows us to mature fully into our potential. So enough from me for now. Thank you so much. Bye.